In a world grappling with unprecedented crises, famine, war, displacement, and climate chaos, the United States has just pledged $2 billion in humanitarian aid to the United Nations. But this headline number masks one of the most controversial shifts in U.S. foreign policy in decades. Today, we're diving deep into what this commitment really means and why it could reshape global aid forever. This isn't just another budget line item. It's a dramatic slice of what used to be America's global humanitarian footprint. For years, the U.S. topped the world in foreign aid contributions, especially to life-saving programs run by UN agencies like the World Food Program, UNHCR, and the International Organization for Migration. But now, this $2 billion pledge, a fraction of what the U.S. used to provide, reflects a radically new approach: cut funding and demand reform. The message is blunt: adapt or die. To understand the real story here, we have to go back to the beginning of this new U.S. foreign aid strategy. At the start of 2025, an executive order paused nearly all U.S. foreign development assistance, an unprecedented move. It was sold as a review of where taxpayer dollars were going, but it also brought sweeping funding freezes and bureaucratic upheaval. USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, was hit especially hard. In early 2025, nearly all its employees were placed on administrative leave as part of budget consolidations into the State Department. Programs that once delivered maternal care, food, vaccines, and emergency response around the world were slashed or suspended. So what exactly is this new $2 billion pledge? The figure was announced in Geneva, where U.S. officials said it would be channeled through the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, led by Tom Fletcher, a former British diplomat tasked with leading a so-called humanitarian reset. Here's the kicker: $2 billion is only a fraction of what the U.S. has historically given. According to UN data, annual voluntary U.S. contributions have ranged from $8 billion to $10 billion, and total humanitarian giving has been as high as $17 billion in some years. And this time, the money won't be distributed directly to individual programs the way it once was. Instead, it's pooled into a centralized fund managed by OCHA, then allocated based on new priorities and performance targets. This emphasis on efficiency and accountability might sound reasonable on its face, but it comes with a stark ultimatum. United Nations agencies, you must reform or risk losing funding entirely. U.S. officials, including Ambassador to the UN Michael Waltz, argue that humanitarian aid needs to be more results-driven and aligned with U.S. strategic interests, a view that diverges sharply from traditional multilateral aid philosophy. But critics warn this sends the wrong message, especially when global needs are exploding. On the ground, organizations like the World Food Program and UNHCR are already facing steep funding gaps. Less money means fewer food deliveries, fewer shelter kits, fewer life-saving services. The fear? People who depend on aid might suffer or die while agencies scramble to adapt. Let's talk about what this means in reality. In Sudan, decades of conflict have devastated communities and created some of the worst humanitarian conditions on Earth. In parts of Gaza, winter rains have turned refugee camps into flooded trenches. And in Afghanistan, millions face hunger as food assistance collapses. These aren't distant headlines. These are children without meals, families without tents, doctors without medicine. And the question now is, will $2 billion be enough to meet all of this need? The short answer from humanitarian analysts is no. This funding level barely scratches the surface, especially when you consider what's been lost from previous aid flows. Around the world, reactions have been mixed and intense. Some governments and aid advocates praise the push for efficiency and accountability, but many humanitarian workers and international partners describe the cuts as short-sighted. They warn that reducing aid during escalating crises undermines stability, fuels hunger and disease, and erodes trust in multilateral cooperation. There's also a diplomatic dimension. U.S. soft power, its ability to influence global outcomes through generosity and partnership, may be eroding right when the world needs it most. So what does this all mean for the future of global humanitarianism? Some experts say this moment represents a broader shift from open-ended support to a transactional, strategic model of aid. It's a world where donor countries demand measurable outcomes, where multi-party bureaucracies are trimmed, and where strategic leverage matters as much as lives saved. But others argue that this approach risks sidelining the most vulnerable, those who can't adapt or compete for scarce funding. The United States says it remains the world's largest humanitarian donor. But with the aid landscape shifting and global needs rising, it's fair to ask,
Are we witnessing a new era of humanitarian strategy or a retreat from global responsibility? Let me know what you think in the comments. Should humanitarian aid be tied to reform and results, or should life-saving assistance remain unconditional? Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more insights into the forces shaping our world. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.